Okay, while the election committee counts the ballots, I would like to introduce our speaker for this evening. Our speaker this evening is Alan Smock. Alan was raised on a small diversified family farm in Bartholomew County. He attended college and received his degree in mechanical engineering. Subsequently, he worked for GM and Anderson for 10 years. He and his wife, Kay, then decided to move to Southern Indiana. Alan worked for Kimball and then Aristocrat as an engineer and manager while living on and managing the 70 acres, which included woods east of Hayesville. His interest in conservation began to grow, and in 2007, Alan became actively involved in the family farm with his brother, who was a pioneer of no-till farming practices. In 2012, Alan became a supervisor for the Dubois County SWCD and subsequently was instrumental in the development of the Dubois County VUJC Land Stewardship Initiative. He currently is a board member of LifeSpring Health Systems. This evening, Alan will report on the 10-year history of the Vincennes University Jasper Campus Land Stewardship Initiative. Alan?
Well, thank you for the opportunity to update you on the Land Stewardship Initiative. It's been 10 years since the LSI was established, and 21 was the 10th crop year. My intent this evening is to provide you with a speaking to the mic, I guess. Okay. My intent this evening is to provide you with a story of what's been happening on the property in the last 10 years, some observations looking back, and considerations for the future of the LSI. Melissa will be showing some slides during this presentation also. If you have any questions or comments, please be sure and talk to me afterwards, or Melissa or Judy about any questions you might have. A little history. As Melissa outlined in the LSI report that was included in the Soil and Water Conservation District's annual report, the VUJC Land Stewardship Initiative was formed as a partnership between the Soil and Water Conservation District and Vincennes University Jasper campus in 2012. VUJ was interested in utilizing its cropland as an educational tool, and the Soil and Water Conservation District was interested in the opportunity to learn firsthand about soil health practices and to demonstrate those practices to the local farming community. What evolved from that discussion was a project that utilized the university's 45 acres of cropland as a long-term demonstration site for improving soil health, as well as exhibiting soil conservation practices. It has been the goal to use the LSI as a means to communicate not only the benefits of improving soil health, but it's demonstrating those practices that are used. In the agreement with Vincennes University, the operation of the LSI the responsibility was given to the Soil and Water Conservation District to operate. An oversight committee that's currently led by Judy Brown provides the overall direction for the Land Stewardship Initiative and includes representatives from the Soil and Water Conservation District, VUJ, and other interested individuals, including farmers such as Dwayne, NRCS, Indiana Department of Ag, and ag retailers. The Ag Operations Committee, in support of the goals outlined, works to put practices on the ground that reduce erosion and improve the soil health, and that can be adopted using techniques that can be adopted by local farmers. My primary focus this evening is to talk about the property and the changes that's been observed. Over the last 10 years, improvements have been made to the property through installation of erosion control practices. Those include subsurface tile, wascobs, which are water and sediment control basins, blind inlets, which we had two types. One was basically a hole dug over an existing tile and backfilled with rock. And then we also had a blind French drain, which we applied, or we dug a trench perpendicular to the tile and put down a perforated tile and then backfilled with rock. We've used grass field borders and waterways, and also installed a stop log feature that connects the output of tile from field 1 to a device that controls the outflow of the water. And we've got an example of that up here if you'd like to see later. The stop log feature allows the tile to be blocked during the winter, reducing excess nitrogen from that field, leaving the tile. It's opened in the springtime to allow the soil to dry for planting. The stop log again is then closed to stop subsurface water from leaving the field during the summer, as well as capturing runoff from the residential area north of the field. Again, there are two surface inlets in that on the north side. In addition, a 60-foot wide strip was disked into field 2, which I think you can see up there, and maintained as a till strip. Production and soil data from the till strip is compared to the production and the soil condition from the adjacent land north and south of the strip. The intent was to have an in-field comparison of these practices. Fields 1 and 2 are sampled. The fields, in fields 1 and 2, the soil is sampled annually using 1-inch grid technique. The soil samples are tested to measure the soil's nutrient levels, and then a nutrient plan is developed and approved by the Ag Committee, and the needed nutrients are applied using variable rate technology. Over the last 9 years, the crop has been planted using no-till precision equipment, and yield data has been captured by a yield monitor equipped combine. The data is analyzed annually to identify the impact of the practices and also to identify problem areas in the field. In addition to the physical changes to the property, farming practices that improve soil health, primarily using no-till practices and fall cover crops, have been used since the beginning of the project. The project has been actively supported by a dedicated group of volunteers, financial supporters, and vendors, including ag retailers, farmers, a seed supplier, excavation contractors, tile and tile installation contractor, aggregate suppliers, precision ag services, lending institutions, Purdue University, Indiana Department of Ag, our own local Purdue Extension, Indiana Association of Saltwater Conservation Districts through the Conservation System Initiative program, NRCS employees, and of course our own SWCD personnel, VUJC facilities, and VUJC support equipment. Some observations. The first year, 2012, was what I like to call a learning year. Trial by fire, so to speak. Soybeans were the first crop planted, and it was a year that glyphosate-resistant mare's tail really invaded the county. Which means I didn't react soon enough to control the hard-to-kill weeds. So in 2012, the LSI had the best crop of mare's tail in the county and the poorest soybean crop in the county. You're welcome. Not a good start, but that fall, the cover crop that we used included cereal rye, and it was very apparent the following spring that the cereal rye really does help suppress mare's tail. So we made some lemonade out of those lemons. In more general terms, over the years, as improvements have been proven, as the improvements to the property's drainage were installed, and as the impact of the cover crops and no-till began to take hold, the soil structure began improving, and the erosion, even on the hills, began to subside. Large rain events that caused major erosion issues early in the project no longer resulted in significant damage. Bart Pistic estimated that the overall farm average erosion, which is the amount of soil moving away from its original location, was about 10 tons per acre when that project began. With the erosion control practices put in place, as well as the soil structure improvements from no-till and cover crop techniques, he estimates now that the LSI average rate is about 2 tons per acre, which is about a 5 times improvement. And he also tells me, I kind of reacted to we still have 2 tons an acre leaving the property, and he assures me that that's a very normal amount. And it's also something that's sustainable on the property. Bart also noticed, and Melissa has observed, that the grass waterways and the field borders in place, the great majority of any soil movement out of the fields is captured by the field borders or the grassed waterways. And before it leaves the property, all the water is clear. So if we have any water that does run off, by the time it gets to the stream, it's clear. The overall production data taken from the property has begun to show an upward trend. And the soybean graph is a bit more consistent than the corn, but both of these trends are in the right direction. And I look forward to continuing increasing our production. But you can see that we really didn't have much, in 2017 or so, really 2018 is when we really start to see things going up a little bit. It takes a while. And it's important to note the 2017 yield dip is due to, in part, to poor germination of the first corn that was planted in it, as caused by cold and wet weather conditions that lasted about 2 weeks. We had to replant about 13.5 acres in late May. There was definitely a yield hit in 17, and as a result of that yield hit, we had some unplanted areas, and we had a cockover invasion that followed. To date, the production comparison between the tilled and the adjacent no-till strips, north and south of the till strip, has been very inconsistent. We've identified a fertilizer spread pattern that may have an impact, but more analysis of this needs to be done in this next year. Melissa also noted, early on, the conventional wisdom was to terminate cover crops before planting. As I mentioned, we started off planting cover crops the first year of our activities. But again, we terminated the cover crop early to have minimal, so that there was minimal residue when planting. A drawback to this approach is that the cover crop is killed before it really develops much biomass. Planting the cash crop into green standing cover crops provides much more subsurface biomass, which helps build organic matter. And the surface residue acts as a thick mat that protects the soil and holds the moisture. Using this technique, the first burn down herbicide application is done when the crop is planted. And in some cases, we've seen that a post spray isn't required, as the cover crop residue and the herbicide residual keep the weeds under control until the crop canopy is over. Planting green was trialed on the property a couple times with crimping, and there were no issues. The entire property was planted green for the first time in 21. Planting went on without a problem. And it was good to have auto steer, I think, and going through that, as you can see. In 21, the beans were planted early, and the cover crop was terminated the same day. It turned wet and cold for a couple of weeks, and we had a perfect environment for slugs, as they like to hide in residue and feast on the slowly emerging soybeans. The damage primarily resulted in what looked like skips in the rows, and the beans appeared to fill in, but there was likely some yield hit this year. Looking back, kind of a broader view, the overall organic matter, which is defined as plant and animal materials in various states of decomposition, is a good indicator of soil health and fertility. It's also a good indicator of increased biologic activity. I ran some numbers from the fields and noted that the average organic matter in 2014, pardon me, which was the first year of grid sampling, was 1.28%. In 2021, the farm average was 1.76, a 37% increase. And it kind of shows what's shown there is the change in the various fields. And I think it's interesting to note that field 6 has a large increase. And that's a field that 2 years ago we allowed to stay, we really allowed it to stay fallow and planted summer cover crops. So it's a good indication that technique works. And the other thing is I was looking at this, the change of from 1.28 to 1.76% of organic matter. I found that the estimated weight of topsoil in an acre is about 2 million pounds. So an organic matter of 1% results in about 11,600 pounds of carbon per acre. So if we go from 1.28% to 1.7%, 1.28 to 1.76, we get a gain between 2000 and 2013 and today of 125 tons of carbon, which really surprised me how much carbon was involved. That was a surprise to me. One other note, this fall, 3 soil sample pairs were taken along the till strip at an adjacent no-till area. Averaging the 3 samples, the organic material between the no-till, or maybe between the tilled and the no-till, was 1.56 to 1.86. And I was a little surprised at that, that it wasn't more closely related to what we had originally. But we had cover crops on the no-till strip until 2015. So even doing no-till, even doing cover crops on a tilled surface and tilled property does make a difference. But it's certainly much more so if it's not tilled. In addition to the overall fertility program, the overall fertility program of the property is improving the use by using precision ag technology, which has allowed for the nutrients to be applied where specifically needed. So what can we say about the last 10 years? From my perspective, the soil is a very, very complicated biome system. Certainly more than I ever imagined. It's also hard to track cause and effect. It requires a long view, as we're seeing. Working with the unforgiving variables of rain, heat, cold, drought, plant diseases, weeds, etc., as well as timing of operations, makes quantifying the benefits of improving soil health difficult, especially in the short term. We may be experiencing an increase in the soil's resiliency or the soil's ability to help crops in times of stress, which is almost impossible to measure. Reducing erosion, using cover crops and no-till practices improve the soil health, period. It works. Keeping living roots in the soil and protective residue mat on the soil minimizes disturbance, helps the soil become more stable, increases the soil's organic matter, till sequesters carbon, and if the trend lines continue, results in greater production. As more of the soil stays in place, the loss of soil and nutrition and the nutrients to the waterways is significantly reduced. There is also a savings by the elimination of the tillage paths and a likely reduction in herbicide use, which should generally offset the cost of cover crops. So what's next? As noted, the soil health practices work. The changes to the soil health are positive and improving. Erosion is reduced. The trend of increasing yield appears to have begun, and some reduction in overall costs. A lot has been learned in 10 years. That said, there's still much to learn and to demonstrate. There are a variety of different practices being used across the nation, but they must be tried locally to understand the trade-offs and additional management techniques required. For example, what is the impact of using more aggressive and larger, more diversified cover crops? And this is an example that we found of. This is a very aggressive cover crop. And if this can be done, just think of the biomass that is achieved and how much increase in organic matter we're likely to achieve. So if we have these kinds of cover crops, What's the impact on our organic matter? You know, what about slugs and voles, those issues that we have with these cover crops? What about summer cover crops? Will they increase rate of organic matter in soil? Will this increase in organic matter be made, and what are the trade-offs? Will the production continue to improve? What about interseeding cover crops with the cash crops? Will there be a net benefit? What about biologicals? The VUJC is a place that these practices can be demonstrated and shared with the farming community. And a couple of final points. Victor Shelton, NRCS agronomist, who some of you may know, has retired from NRCS and has joined the Ag Committee this year. Victor will be a great asset. By using his knowledge and experience to review the 10 years of LSI practices, soil testing conditions, and to help better understand the changes to the property and help plot the future practices that are used. And finally, finding ways to provide useful and actionable information to our local farming community is a challenge. It's my hope that a variety of outreach techniques can be used to open up the discussion, to help and support the new conservation farmers, as well as provide avenues to educate and support the seasoned conservation farmers. We have an opportunity. With that, I would like to thank the district, VUJ, volunteers, and everyone who has contributed to the LSI. It's been a worthwhile 10 years, and it will continue to be a source of learning and education in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Alan, for your report. We greatly appreciate your effort over the last 10 years and the insight that you've given us. 10 years, wow, long time. Alan, yeah. It goes quickly. I did want to note that we have a gift for you to thank you for those 10 years, also for sharing the report with us. And then I did want to announce that Alan did receive the Indiana Earth Team Volunteer Award in Indianapolis last week. So let's give Alan a big round of applause. Thank you. Okay, next up, we have reports from the staff. And is Judy, are you going to start off? Melissa is? Okay. Melissa, first off.
Seemed to make sense to have the 10-year LSI followed by my annual report for what happened on the property this year. My name is Melissa Brusha. I'm the resource specialist with the district, and my primary job is coordinating the LSI farm. So this year, an additional 400 feet of tile was added to field 7. There was a steep in the side of the hill, and we wanted to take care of that. Immediately upon putting this tile in, it started draining water, and that area did not have any issues with crop this year, so it was a success. This year, due to larger planting equipment, we expanded the tilled strip from its original 40-foot width to a 60-foot width. Those little yellow flags there are marking the new boundaries. For the first time in the history of the project, as Alan mentioned, we planted all of the acres green. And you can see the mat there on the bottom, a very thick mat, and then hidden under the words to the upper right is a little slug, which was one of our challenges this year, as Alan had mentioned. Due to the pandemic, our typical workshops were not able to be held, so we did host a lunch and learn series. It was a 4-week session, once a week in the month of February. Talking with the gentlemen on the Ag Committee and what they've learned, just principles of soil health, resources for farmers. If you'd like to go back and watch those videos are now posted on the Dubois District's YouTube website. So all 4 of those workshops are available to anyone. This year, there was a movie called Kiss the Ground that was, actually, I think it came out in 2020, but this year several groups watched that, and I had the opportunity to speak in front of those groups and demonstrate the slake test, which you can see here at the bottom, just how the soil aggregates do not hold together when they've been tilled and how they do. These are soil samples that were taken from the field, showing the difference that 10 years of cover crops and no-till will do in the soil. The bottom left picture is talking about bricks versus sponge, how you want your soil to function. You want it to be able to absorb the water that's coming into it and hold it and have the air spaces to make that possible. So over 150 people over the course of 5 different events heard those presentations. This fall, again, outdoors, because we had to do things differently this year, we hosted a women's learning circle with Women for the Land, and there were a dozen local landowners that came to the workshop, learned about soil health, and had an opportunity to tour the LSI farm. If anyone else would be interested in a tour of the LSI farm, call me. I will talk. I'll limit it to however long you want to listen to. We can do all day if we need to, or we can go 25 minutes. Either's good. So they had a fun day, enjoyed the fellowship with other women, and enjoyed learning about the farm. This year, as again, Alan said, we hosted, or actually maybe it wasn't Alan that said this one, the awards. We hosted the state soil contest. So we had some local schools attending this, as well as schools from around the state. There were over 300 students on site that day, both FFA students as well as 4-H soil judging teams. So it was a very good day. And with the support of a grant that was written from 19 to 21, we have completed the purchase of the soil health testing kit. I am available to come to landowner properties throughout the county and do some soil assessments, looking at infiltration and a variety of other tests. Again, call me at the office if you'd like to schedule one of these site visits when the ground is not frozen, preferably. Now it's Justin's turn. Justin, scroll the little ball.
Yeah, I'm Justin Berry. I'm resource specialist for the Dubois Soil and Water. One of the big things that I do is run the Clean Water Indiana Livestock Grant. One of the practices that we install is a HUAP, which is a heavy use area protection. It's basically a gravel feeding pad that keeps the livestock out of the mud during feeding and keeps the waste in an easy to clean location. This year in 2021, we had a 3-year grant that ran 2019 through 2021. But in this year, we installed 3 heavy use pads, and they resulted in 230 tons per year reduction of sediment, 112 tons per year phosphorus reduction, and 220 pounds per year reduction of nitrogen. Another practice that we paid for with Clean Water Indiana was cover crops. We ended up paying for 690 acres to be planted. That resulted in 6,373 tons of sediment reduction, 5,366 pounds of phosphorus reduction, 8,487 pounds of nitrogen reduction. Another thing I do through contribution agreement with NRCS is do status reviews and re-enroll checks on Conservation Reserve Program or CRP practices. One of them that I check is filter strips. They basically create a buffer using grass to reduce the amount of sediment and dissolved contaminants coming off the cropland and entering streams. This year, we checked 88 of them for status reviews. Another practice is a grass waterway, which basically is a conveyance runoff channel that's constructed and uses grass to prevent gully formation, increased water quality. In 2021, there was 56 of those inspected. And the last one that I check now is establishment of permanent introduced grasses and legumes. That's basically a grassland practice. They're usually full field practices. They reduce soil erosion, improve water quality, and enhance habitat for wildlife and pollinators. This year, I checked 15 of those.
Hi, everyone. My name is Emily Finch. I am the invasive species specialist for the SWCD. but my position is actually shared with Davies and Martin counties as well. And unlike my coworkers, my position is 100% funded by a Clean Water Indiana grant. And in 2021, part of that was starting a new grant. So previously, we had operated under a 2018 through 2020 grant. So in the middle of COVID and everything, we had the big turnover of finishing that project and starting a new one. And we were very fortunate to receive another grant. But it's a little bit different than our previous one. So in the past, you might have remembered, I could come do site visits with landowners. I did education outreach, and we also had a small cost share program for invasive control. The new grant, we still included a lot of the great things that everyone loves. So I still can do site visits for landowners. I still do a lot of education and outreach. Unfortunately, while we tried for it, the grant award that we received was slightly trimmed down. So we did not receive any funding for cost share for invasives. However, a new project that we decided to take on to keep challenging ourselves to do more when it comes to invasive species is we decided to include in the grant roadside mapping and surveys of invasive plants. And in 2021, we started that by doing poison hemlock, since we knew it was a big concern. It was starting to spread on the roadsides, but we weren't entirely sure how much the distribution there was. So in May and June, myself and in Dubois County, it was Melissa, drove me around. We drove our entire tillage transect route, which crisscrosses the county and primarily focuses on county roadways. And we drove when poison hemlock was blooming, and we mapped it. And among the 3 counties, I include a little bit of statistics here, we drove, so this isn't how many miles were surveyed, but how many miles got put on vehicles, 1,155 miles across the 3 counties. And I recorded 1,428, I guess you could call them populations. It was a mixture of points, lines, and polygons that we mapped on a tablet. So I do not have any fancy maps for you yet. That is my project for February this month. But there's some pictures. Melissa was nice enough to take a picture of me by one of the poison hemlock plants. But we are excited at hopefully the March SWCD meeting. I plan to talk to the board and hopefully have some maps for them and take a look and see what we collected and what we want to focus on in 2022, whether we want to map more or whether we want to take what we've gathered and start contacting landowners that we can identify from the survey. So, and of course, I mentioned landowner technical assistance. That has been a primary goal of mine. It is amazing, you get out there and you walk the property with a landowner, and it doesn't matter how many presentations you sit through, you learn more from that experience, both me and the landowner sometimes. And in 2021, I provided technical assistance. So that was a mixture of site visits and just phone calls, emails to 48 different landowners, and 30 of those were in Dubois County. So unfortunately, I have not been able to spend as much office time in the other 2 counties due to COVID. And of course, we did a lot of extra work to education outreach at events and trainings. The bottom photo was something that was kind of exciting this year. We did a lot of work at Niehaus Park in Huntingburg. We had a weed wrangle there with a bunch of volunteers. And then we also had some of our volunteers from our invasive species group, Ron Rathon and Justin Herbaugh right there, one of our area foresters, came out and we walked around with the park staff and helped them on identifying invasive plants in the park and talking about control techniques and timing and everything like that. And so I think they got a lot out of it, just spending time and seeing what you have on your property. And of course, the volunteer groups, the SISMAs, helped me with a bunch of other events as well. So this actual top left photo there was one of our Girl Scout volunteers at our Niehaus Park workday. But we also did get to do a couple other in-person events here on the right. That was our Family Nature Fest at Ferdinand State Forest. And we also were able to get a small grant from the Dubois SWCD Community Fund that supported our outreach using billboards again, continue our outreach, this time on burning bush, which is an invasive. We are encouraging folks to get out of their landscaping and replace with something else. So in Dubois County alone, we had 10 events that were attended by 154 people, and we estimate reached at least 150 more. And that is all I have. If you check out the annual report, there's a few more facts and figures in there. If any of you would like me to come out to your property to help identify invasives, just call our office and we'll schedule it. And next up, we have Judy Brown.
Thanks, Emily, and thanks to all the staff for your great reports this evening. I think one of the biggest parts of my job as director is just stepping back and staying out of everyone's way. We have a really great staff, lots of energy, lots of good ideas, and they do a great job of getting conservation on the ground. One thing that I would like to point out to you is our annual report. I think at the next slide. There we go. Our annual report. It was distributed through the Ferdinand News. We have copies on the table if you'd like to take one along. This is a summary of all of our accomplishments over the past year. And one of the major accomplishments that I really want to brag on is the staff. We are very fortunate to have a really good staff, a large staff, which is kind of unusual among SWCDs. And we could not have this staff without the support of two groups. And the first group is our supervisors, the SWCD supervisors that are in the room, and also supervisors from the past. And we have three former supervisors here. Jack Welp was a supervisor, Dwayne was a supervisor, and Alan Smock was a supervisor in the past. And through all of their efforts and working with the county officials, we were able to build a really good program, a really good staff, and get a lot of grants and do a lot of good work in the county. And that leads me into the next group that I really want to acknowledge and thank is the county officials. Without their support, we would not have the staff members that we do. Most of us, with the exception of Emily, are county employees. And so without that support from the county officials, we would not be here and not being able to accomplish the things that we do within the county. So I wanted to thank the supervisors. I wanted to thank the county officials for all of their support. I wanted to thank the staff for the great job that they do. Again, all of our accomplishments are in the report, so I won't go into that any further. And one other thing I want to touch on briefly is our financial report. And that too is in the annual report. So I just wanted to mention, we started in 2021 with a beginning balance of $21,597.06. We received governmental support in the amount of $143,810.18. Some of that was appropriations from the state or the county, as well as Clean Water Indiana grants that we received, which is a big part of the funding that we do receive. So we also had other revenue of $10,106.61. So our subtotal then of income and the beginning balance was $206,975.42. But we don't sit on that money. We use some of that fund, some of the funds for cost share, some of the funds for all of the projects and the things that we do. So we had total expenditures of $122,586.37. So our ending balance then at the end of the year was $84,389.05. And just to let you know that we no longer have that amount in our account. Through the support of Dwayne Hof, we have a new piece of equipment. And I don't know if I'm going to say this right. It is a Great Plains cedar. He's a no-till cedar, so he's nodding his head. So he'll have to show us how it works, and we'll get that on the ground this year. So we have a new piece of rental equipment. So we are using the funds that we received to invest further into our programming. So, and if there are no questions about the annual report, I will turn things back over to Brenda. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. Last minute change. I'm turning things over to Jessica.
There's just one slide that I wanted to make a quick mention. We have revamped the website to make it more interactive, and I'm doing my best to update it more frequently. All of our newsletters going back to the mid 2000s are on the website. The annual reports, we have 3 of those that we found. We have PDFs of that are on the website. You'll notice right here on our front page, we discuss current cost sharing that we have that's available and how you can get to it and who to talk to. And then a really good new feature is on our equipment rental page, we've created a calendar. So before you call the office to request your name be put down to rent the no-till drill or the no-till seeder, when I get it on here, you'll be able to see that it's busy or that it's available. Instead of names or anything like that on there, it just says busy, so all your information is private, but I have that information on our end. So this should help fully, for any of you here who use it or who are interested, it should help to streamline that process so you know when it's available and when it's not before you call. But check out the revamped website, DuboisSWCD.org. Give me your thoughts, what you want to add, what you think is a little off. Anything like that would be helpful. And yeah, just use it, get some information. We're trying to make it a lot more interactive and useful. Okay.
As you can see, we have an extremely talented group of staff members. We cannot do what we do without the talented staff. And again, thank you to the County Council and County Commissioners for helping support that staff. Greatly appreciate it. Our office is one of our county district, I should say, is one of the largest workloads in the state of Indiana. So we couldn't begin to do all of this without the staff that we have. So I personally just want to give a round of applause for our staff here. So our staff also does a lot of other good works as far as volunteering. And in addition to Alan, who was awarded an Earth Team Volunteer Award, the West County District was also awarded an award last week in Indianapolis. I know this is a little hard to see, but it's a 2021 NRCS State Earth Team Volunteer Award presented to Dubois County Soil and Water Conservation District. We would not have been able to receive that award if it would not have been for our dedicated staff. So again, just thank you to all the staff, obviously supervisors, anyone that volunteers, again, very much appreciated. Okay, next up, we have a lot of wonderful partners who help support our mission within the Indiana Conservation Partnership. And they have reports they'd like to share with us. And I believe first up is Emily Kelly. She's our district conservationist, and she is joining us remotely. Emily, do you have a report to share with us?
Hello, everybody. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. I've just got a couple quick updates. There is a second round of wetland reserve easement funding for 2022. That application cutoff date is February 28th. So if there's anybody interested or knows anybody that might be interested, I need applications turned in to me by the end of the month. We are currently reduced to 25% staffing due to COVID. So we ask that people continue to call ahead and make appointments if they have any business with NRCS, the SWCD, or ISDA. December 17th of last year was the cutoff date for 2022 funding for the Environmental Quality Incentives Program. Dubois County ended up having 50 EQIP applications, so that was an increase from previous years, so that's really good. We are gearing up to start working on CRP again, the Conservation Reserve Program. I'll be working with Justin closely on that to do re-enrolls and status reviews. That pretty well wraps up my updates. I would just like to go ahead and say thank you to all the producers and office staff that I've had the pleasure of working with so far. It's been a great start to my career, so thanks.
Thank you so much, Emily. We appreciate the update. Next up is Bradley Hoffman, the County Executive Director for the Farm Service Agency, and he has some information he'd like to share with us. Bradley is also attending via Zoom. So Bradley, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Brenda. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, I think we're good.
All right, perfect. All right. As Brenda stated, I'm Bradley Huffman. I've been the County Executive Director here at the Dubois County Farm Service Agency since about July of 21, so about 6.5 months so far. Some of you may remember I started as a program technician here in this office around 2015. Went into management training program for about a year. And shortly after management training, I was hired on as the County Executive Director up in the Rush Shelby County office, where I oversaw Rush and Shelby County FSA. And when the opportunity came to come back to Dubois County with this position, I made the transfer. A few updates about the office. Emily kind of hit on some of them. I'm attending virtually tonight as currently, based on the coronavirus numbers in the county, we are not allowed to do in-person outreach events. Goes along with the operating at 25% capacity with no visitors in the building. We do have a picnic table outside we're able to do some business on, and we've been able to discover some new ways of conducting business via email and some other software capabilities throughout the last couple of years. So that has been handy as well. As far as staff is concerned in the office, it's currently Beth Gudorf and Jackie Dant as program technician, and I'm working here as well. So kind of like Emily said, as a result of staffing levels and the inability to kind of have visitors, we ask that you kind of call ahead, let us know that you're coming, what you may be coming for, so we can provide you the best service that we can. As far as a couple program updates, some important deadlines coming up for those of you that may participate in some of our programs. The 2022 Agriculture Risk Coverage and Price Loss Coverage, or the ARC PLC program, has a sign-up deadline of March 15th. Several of you chose multi-year contract elections at the beginning, most likely. And if no changes have been made to the farm since that started in 2019, then the contract will keep rolling. If you do want to change your elections or have made changes to the farm throughout the last couple of years, you can make those changes by March 15th. My best advice again is to call the office, and you can check in and see if your farms are signed up or what programs you're in, and kind of make a decision based off of that. Last week, a general conservation reserve program sign up was actually announced. Sign up started yesterday, January 31st, and is going to end on March 11th. These general signups kind of come and go. There's not really a super set schedule to them. They are a competitive nationwide ranking process that has many variables, including, soil types, the practice types, rental rates, and other things of that nature. So that's on a nationwide competitive ranking process. If you're interested in potentially participating in that, feel free to contact the office and find out more information. They also announced a CRP grassland sign up will plan on being offered starting April 4th of this year and running through May 13th. And that's going to be a grassland sign up. And then, as always, the continuous CRP sign up kind of runs continuously throughout the year. So if you have any interest in any of those programs, feel free to reach out to the office and we can get you more information and help you out there. And then for any of you who may have hogs or know somebody with hogs, there's currently a spot market hog pandemic program going on. It's kind of at a pause, standstill right now as far as approvals and disapprovals are concerned, and that's on a national basis. But sign up started December 15th and runs through February 25th of this year. The point of the program is to provide assistance to producers who sold hogs through a negotiated sale from April 16th, 2020 through September 1st, 2020. That was considered the period where those producers faced the greatest reduction in market prices due to the COVID-19 pandemic. As I said, those approvals and disapprovals are currently on pause, and we're awaiting further guidance on how to proceed with the program. But if you or anybody you know might be interested in potentially participating, feel free to call the office, and that sign up ends February 25th as of right now. Those are some of the main things we got going on right now. I'd like to thank Judy and all the Dubois County Soil and Water Conservation District for allowing me the time to speak tonight and provide a brief update on behalf of FSA. I would also like to thank them for their assistance they've provided us on our programs throughout the year and years, really. So that's all I've got, and I look forward to working with you all in the future. And thank you.
Thank you so much, Bradley. Let's give a round of applause to our Indiana Conservation Partnership. Again, thank you so much to those folks who have been with us tonight, whether in person or via Zoom. We greatly, greatly appreciate you being with us. To everyone who has supported us, again, thank you. Hopefully next year we will be able to have a normal meeting with food. I know that's been really a good thing as far as to gather. So hopefully we can get back to maybe a more normal meeting next year. So again, thank you so much. Safe travels. We will meet to reorganize in about 10 minutes. Thanks.